Hi, Florida FBLA. Welcome to our February webinar, and actually our second to last webinar with our current state officer team. So we just wanted to go ahead and begin by telling you, first of all, my name is Yusuf Fatah. I'm your State Region 4 Vice President, and joining us today we have
Kyle Johnson, your State President.
So this webinar is going to be focused on the state officer application, and we're going to run through it and clarify maybe any questions that people may have and make sure that everyone can understand it. And we really don't want anyone to think that this is just for those who are planning to run for state office this year, because the state officer application is very similar from year to year. So it'll definitely be beneficial to anybody who thinks that they have state office in their future. So let's go ahead and begin. So
before we begin, we'd like to mention that we'll be open to questions this entire webinar, and we'll answer them as we get them, and then we'll have a session at the end dedicated to any questions you may have, not just about the state packet, but also anything else about the state conference this year. But we do want to mention that we do have some rules in Florida about pre-campaigning. So please, when you're asking a question, please don't say, "Hi, I'm blank and I'm running for this position." Just ask your question in a more general sense. All right, so Yusuf, do you want to, well, I'll start out with the applicant checklist. So in addition to the actual state officer application that you'll find on page 35 of the 2017 FBLA SLC packet, there's also a few other things that we'll need, and you can see it in the checklist at the beginning of the application. We will need a resume, including any qualifications that you have for office outside of FBLA. We'll also need a letter of recommendation from your local chapter advisor, a letter of recommendation from a school administrator, like your principal, or I had my guidance counselor write a recommendation last year. You'll need a copy of your current transcript that doesn't only show your GPA, so it must show your GPA, and also your class rank or district rank, that type of thing. And then you'll also need the completed application. So Yusuf will start with the applicant fact sheet.
So just to run through the applicant fact sheet really quickly, it's just going to ask for essentially the base of what Florida FBLA will need in the case that you do get elected into office, and also if there's anything that we need to contact you for before your campaign or even during. So as you can see on the screen, it just has a few very general areas such as what office you're seeking, your name, the name of your chapter, other things such as your address, your email, stuff like that. So this is very important to make sure that you fill it out completely and importantly, because in the case that you are elected into office, it's very important that Florida FBLA has all of your information so that we can make sure that the state officer team is well in contact and running smoothly.
All right, so next is the applicant autobiography. It's similar to your resume in that you'll put all your FBLA experience, your business courses, your awards and honors, any interests or hobbies, anything that the candidate screening committee or that the members in FBLA may find interesting or relevant to your campaign. And we also just want to get a bit of your personality and who you are as a person. So that's the applicant autobiography.
The next thing that we have in the application is just a statement. So as you can see, it says just a statement, which you could consider kind of a mini essay of 300 words or less. And so it's just anything that you wish to share with the officer screening committee about why you believe that you should be a state officer. So, and you could see the candidate statement as your opportunity to truly express yourself as to why you want to run for state office, what you believe you can do, and how you would use the position if you're elected. So in my opinion, this is one of the most influential tools that's available to you throughout your candidate application, simply for the fact that it allows for you to express yourself very heavily.
All right, next is the candidate writing assignment. Similar to the above candidate statement, These will be short essays, but they will be shorter than your candidate statement. Each of them only needs to be like a lengthy paragraph or a longer paragraph. They include questions like, why are you a member of FBLA? If you're elected as a state officer, what would you like to accomplish first? That gives you a background on why you want to run, your experience in FBLA, and we're just trying to paint more of a picture of who you are as a member of FBLA. So there are quite a few questions in the candidate writing assignment, but we think it's a great introduction of the almost the workload that you'll have as a FBLA state officer. Do you have anything else to add about this, Yusuf?
Well, just that once again, it's another really important way for you to express yourself. Here, the application is giving you a bunch of questions that are probably things that when you're in your screening, for those of you who don't know, when you are a state officer applicant, before you, on the first day of the state leadership conference, which this year will be a Thursday, you would actually go into a screening room with your advisor and be screened by a member or two of the board of directors of Florida FBLA, and they will have your application there printed out in front of them. So this is an absolute amazing way for you to express yourself and really get information across to your screeners so that they can stem off of this and ask you some questions that they may have.
Definitely. Right. So the next thing are the commitment statements. So each of these are just to make sure that your advisor and that your school administration knows what will be involved in being a state officer, and that the responsibilities you'll have to set an example for the rest of FBLA and represent your FBLA not just well at the state conferences, but also at your school and at your actions in other clubs. So you just need to present it to your advisor and your administrator, get them to check each of the boxes and sign.
This next portion of the application is similar to the previous one, where it is a certification form. And this is just making sure that there's a record that both yourself, your local chapter advisor, a school administrator, and your parents as well all understand the rules associated with becoming a state officer, with your campaign, and that any of the consequences that come from breaking these commitments or rules. And it also certifies that all of the work that you have submitted is yourself. So once again, simply just read through it, ensure that everything is correct, and have yourself, your parents, your chapter advisor, and your school administrator of your choice go ahead and sign it.
And then we have the Florida FBLA State Officers Agreement. So this lists all of your responsibilities as a state officer, what you will expect to do, and that also what you should expect while campaigning. So it includes stuff like the limit to the amount of money you're able to spend on your campaign, that you should follow the handbook, keep your opinions separate from FBLA, PBL policies and goals, but then also being prompt for all activities as a state officer, wearing your identification badge, that type of thing. Then section 2 is also similar in that it's all of the stuff that you will do as a state officer. It contains your responsibilities, what you will be required to attend, and how you will be reimbursed throughout the year in your activities. Then you will sign and date that. And then this is the last page of the packet of the application, but there's one other item that you'll need to include in your application. It's at the bottom of the checklist, and we want to make sure you do not miss it because it's sort of hidden. It's the financial statement that you will list everything that you spent or plan to spend on your campaign. So this will be tentative, and you'll give the final financial statement at your candidate screening. So we want to make sure that you don't go over that limit in the amount you're able to spend in your campaign.
So yes, going off of what Kyle said, we just wanted to reiterate that in addition to these pages, that checklist for me personally was very helpful when submitting my application. So please make sure that you do have a resume. The resume is different than the autobiographical sheet. So please make sure to include a resume as well. The letters of recommendation, a copy of your transcript. I know that Kyle mentioned earlier to make sure that it has certain things. The best way to make sure that is if you go into whoever is responsible for transcripts at your school, make sure to tell them that you need an official transcript. And for me personally, that came in an envelope with a seal over it. So that's how you would know that it is good to go. And also, lastly, just the financial statement, a very important thing because that helps the state office make sure that everyone is eligible to run because there is a campaign financial limit when running your campaign.
So we have, we can answer any questions you may have now. Just type them in the live chat. We have one question so far. It's what are the dates for the State Leadership Conference again? It is the 23rd through 26th of March for the 2017 State Leadership Conference. Yusuf, do you have anything else to add about the state officer application?
Not really, other than just a couple words for everyone who's watching that's considering applying. I just wanted to say that it's I definitely encourage everyone to apply to consider running for state office because it definitely is a very rewarding experience. And as our time on the state officer team is coming to a close, I can definitely say that it has truly been one of the best experiences of our lives. And I encourage each and every one of you to reach out and definitely look into seeing if applying for state office is right for you.
Definitely. So we'll stay probably another 5 minutes to answer any questions anyone else may have. All right, do you need to be a district officer to apply? So the answer to that right now is no, you do not need to be a district officer, but you should make sure that you've been a chapter officer. But it's definitely suggested that you've been a district officer so that when you're campaigning, you'll be able to point to the experience that you've had as a district officer. But you shouldn't let that discourage you if you haven't been a district officer. You should definitely still apply because maybe you're, the other people you may be running against may not have been district officers. So.
I have also gotten a couple questions. So the first one is, who should the letters of recommendation be addressed to? Kyle, do you want to answer that one?
That's a good question. You could either say like to a whom it may concern, or I would probably address it actually to Miss Jody Jones, the state advisor.
And all of Mrs. Jones' information can be found on the state packet. Additionally, another question is, do we have to bring everything that we bought to the screening? So that is also something mentioned in the application, that a sample of everything you plan to give away at your booth. So for example, when I was running my campaign, that was a flyer, a name tag ribbon, a business card, one of every type of candy that I was planning to give away. And additionally, a picture of anything you plan to have hung up at your booth, such as a trifold board. That all should be brought with you to screening because everything has to go through a final approval, as well as a copy of your speech.
And make sure you do not deviate from your speech significantly as you give it. You will be disqualified if you do.
Yes. And
time,
sorry.
Time limits are strictly enforced at the state conference. For example, if you're running for like secretary, president, or reporter, if you go over the conference or over the time, I will tap a gavel, and then Cybus will, or the people who run the conference will cut off the microphone.
Yes, and that definitely, in all of my experiences as a member, definitely looks really bad on the person who is giving the speech. So Definitely make sure to practice your speech ahead of time, because aside from that, it definitely gives you more confidence on stage. So make sure to practice it and just make sure that everything is adhering to the guidelines. I got another question asking to just talk a little more about the officer screening committee. So Kyle, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. It is usually one of the board of director members. And you simply go through your campaign materials and your speech. They might ask you a few questions about something on your resume, but you shouldn't expect that. That's very rare. That didn't happen to me as I was going through the process. That was my second time being a state officer, so I already knew the person who was screening me, that board of director member. So Yusuf, as when you were running for the first time, what was that like for you?
Well, actually, I just wanted to tell everyone, thank you, Kyle, for that, that definitely going into screening, I was very, very nervous, but going into screening, please, don't be nervous about it. Just make sure you go in with confidence and poise. I actually had no idea who was screening me. I believe I did recognize the name of the board of directors member because I had been doing my research for different FBLA competitions that I had competed in. But knowing the person who was screening me, I didn't really know them. And when I walked in there, I was very nervous, but the people, all of the people on our board of directors, they all work tirelessly for this organization, and they're all really, really kind. So definitely don't be too stressed out about it. Make sure that you go in there with confidence, and they're all really nice people and they want what's best for the organization. So for me, I was a little nervous, but after getting in there and going through the screening for a few minutes, I definitely calmed down, and it was a great experience overall.
And all they're trying to do is making sure that you are qualified and that you're ready to run for office. They're really just trying to make sure that you don't break any of the rules or regulations set out in the packet. All right, we will wait in a few more minutes for any other questions before we sign off from this webinar. So if you're running for state office, it's important to keep up what's going on in the organization. So if you're watching this webinar right now, I'm sure you're already doing a great job. Continue to read the communicator. You can find that on your website, and it's also emailed out to your advisors. It's a magazine that's put together by your state officers, both in FBLA and PBL, to update you what's going on the state level.
And pretty shortly, actually, I believe we should have our next communicator, the spring communicator, which will be, the final communicator for this state officer team. So we definitely encourage you, if you haven't seen the previous ones already, to go to the website, which is floridafbla-pbl.com. And I believe it's under the resources tab. You can find communicator, and they'll all be there. And definitely be on the lookout for the most recent one, which should be coming out pretty soon.
We have one more question. How do workshops work at states? If you want to answer this.
So workshops typically go on the second day of the state leadership conference, which would be on a Friday this year. They'd be going on throughout the day. So we have the workshops, in my opinion, are one of the most rewarding opportunities of the conference. So for those of you who are joining us that maybe don't know what a workshop is, it's when someone from the community, typically an adult, sometimes we might have some state officers doing it, would be presenting a kind of sort of a mini lesson on whatever topic they decide to do. For example, often it's things to do with leadership. I know I've done personally I've seen a really great one done about teamwork, and they're really rewarding opportunities. So if you guys, whenever you do have a free moment on the second day of the state leadership conference on that Friday, please definitely stop by some of the workshops and go and listen to what the speaker has to say, because for they've always, in my experience has been really amazing. And if that question, I don't really know if you were kind of wondering how would they work with campaigns. I believe that we do have workshops going on after the campaign session if you don't wish to leave your booth during campaigns. Kyle, do you have anything else to add?
Not really. You'll have a new incentive this year to attend workshops in a new program that we're implementing at the State Leadership Conference this year, Goose Chase. It's a sort of scavenger hunt for the 21st century that we will explain in the next webinar as we get closer to the State Leadership Conference. We're really excited for that this year.
Yes.
All right, we'll take wait a few more minutes for any questions.
I just got one, Kyle. Do you want to go ahead and take this question? It's, what would candidates do if they have a competition during campaign time?
All right, that's a good question. So I was fortunate not to have this problem, but I remember a few years ago, someone from our school was running for state office, and she was competing in e-business, so she had to leave her booth, but she created a schedule with the other FBLA members at her school, so we campaigned for her while she was gone. So my best suggestion, even if you don't have a competition that conflicts with your campaign booth, is to continue to create a schedule with your school, with the chapter members at your school, to have people help you with your campaign. And while you're not there, if you have a campaign manager, make sure that they're there to make sure that people are still running your campaign booth as you're gone. I will say that when you do step away from your campaign booth, I do think that's a little detrimental to your campaign, especially if it's during a popular time where people are going around the campaigns, like closer to lunch. If people are getting lunch from the hotel, the campaign booths are right by there. So do your best to get back as soon as possible. And make sure that you schedule people that you really trust during that time to be there. All right, is the deadline for state office a postmark deadline or a received deadline? That's a good question. Yusuf, do you want to take it? All right, well, I'm pretty sure it's a received deadline. I can double check for you, but I'm pretty positive.
Yes, I also agree. It is definitely a received deadline.
So mail it out as soon as possible. Don't wait till the last minute.
So definitely make sure to account for how long it's going to take from getting to where you are to the address that it must be sent to, which is in Zephyr Hills, Florida. One thing that it actually says in the state registration packet to do for chapter submitting events, and we definitely encourage it for state officer applications, is to include an addressed postcard back to yourself, and that already has a stamp on it and everything, that that serves as sort of your receipt for your state officer application being received. So whenever the state advisor, Mrs. Jones, receives your application, she will take that postcard, drop it in the mail, and you getting it back is your way of knowing that your application was received.
It's incredibly important that you do that. That's a great idea, Yusuf. Right. We have another question. The campaign finance is a $1,000 limit, correct? What if between now and the SLC, I buy more things for my campaign that I didn't mention in my state officer application? Yeah, that's a great question. So the financial statement that you submit with your application is a tentative one, but when you get to the officer screening, you'll have a final financial statement set up. But we do want to make sure that you always keep the amount less than $1,000.
And it's very important to note that this less than $1,000 should be documented. I know it says it somewhere in the state officer application because I remember it being last year that documentation is required. So documentation, for example, would be whatever you buy for your state campaign, you must submit a receipt to that it costs that much money. So definitely make sure to include that, and that way we ensure that the campaign is actually under $1,000.
We'll take questions for probably 2 more minutes. All right, what if a district advisor or school teacher were to donate items for a campaign? How could that receipt be recorded?
So the way, for example, because I had this happen where my district was fortunate enough to be able to support me through my campaign. And the way that they did that, which was one of the best ways I think would be to handle it, is where you purchase the materials and they reimburse you. That way you still have a receipt for whatever was purchased. And if not, what you would include in the financial statement would be how much these are worth. So for example, let's say that they donated the print that they printed out flyers for you and donated those, you would just have to include the value. And I would personally suggest any kind of written statement from them, such as an email or something that they can quickly type up stating how much the value of these items are.
All right, we'll make one last call for questions. All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, we'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight for the February webinar. We'll have one more webinar, we think, maybe 2 more, but most likely 1 more before the State Leadership Conference about preparing for the State Leadership Conference and the new things at the conference this year. So we'd like to thank everyone coming out and say good luck on your campaigns.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone. Have a nice night.